I was halfway through my first coffee when the phone rang with a voice that knew my name too well. Mr. Hale. This is Harbor Federal. We need to confirm the wire transfer you approved this morning. I did not approve any transfer. I do not move money. I do not have. I live alone in a small walk up in South Boston. Read the name on that approval again, I said. My hands went cold. Walter Hale. Co-applicant Ethan Hale. Funds will route to a luxury card in the name of Sloan Hale. With things 5 like, my son, my daughter-in-law. I set the phone on the counter and stared at the chipped rim of my cup. I never opened a line. I said, I never signed for a card. And to do the crown. We have a digital signature and a 2-factor code sent to your number. The woman said. The number ended in 37. And to do the crown. Mine ends in 29. My screen lit with a second alert. Past due. New balance. A figure I could not read all at once. 210,000 and some change. I opened the junk drawer and found the file where I kept my Social Security card. It was still there. The paper yellowed at the edges. But real. A knock shook the door. A man in a navy jacket held a clipboard and a smile that did not reach his eyes. Mr. Hale. Notice. From the county. There is a lien on this unit secured by a personal loan. If you need to contest it, call the number on page 2. As a muff, I took the paper. The signature at the bottom looked like mine. It curved the same way on the H. It pressed too hard on the W. It was almost perfect. Almost. My heart made a tight sound in my chest. Ethan has a warm laugh and a quick mind. He also has debts that eat through paychecks. He told me he was fine. He said Sloan just liked nice things. He said I worried too much. I held the pen the way I did when he learned to write his name on my kitchen table. Slow down and tell the truth. I used to say. The room tipped. The coffee went cold. I called my son. He did not pick up. I keep the heat low to save the bill. The walls in my walk-up are thin and tired. Paint peels near the window. I talk to my wife in the mornings. She died 9 winters ago. Her name was Nora. I keep her photo by the sink. It is small and bright. In that picture she is laughing. Her hair is pulled back by a red ribbon. If I say her name out loud, the room feels warmer. My name is Walter Hale. I turned 68 last spring. I worked 39 years as a transit electrician. I fixed rails in the snow and rain. I slept in break rooms. I missed birthdays. I saved what I could. I am not a rich man. I am a careful one. I know where every dollar should go. I know the slow math of rent and food. Ethan is my son. He came early one October morning. He was blue and silent. Nora cried until he breathed. He grew fast. He loved puzzles. He liked to take apart radios. He laughed with his whole face. When I got home late, he would hold the screwdriver like a sword and show me what he had built. He met Sloan at a gallery opening in the South End. She wore a white coat and a perfume that stayed in the air. She said she worked in marketing. She said she knew people with doors that opened when she called. I shook her hand and felt a small chill. I told myself it was only because the night was cold. Their wedding was lovely and loud. I gave more than I should. I wrote a check and hid my panic. The room had gold chairs. The band played a Sinatra song Nora loved. Ethan looked like a king. Sloan looked past everyone. She looked at the cameras. She smiled only when the lens found her. After the wedding, they moved into a loft near the harbor. Exposed brick. Tall windows. A rent that could eat a man. Ethan said not to worry. He had a new job in software sales. He said the commission would be big. Sloan sent me photos of the view and the kitchen. She wrote that the countertop was imported stone. I said it was pretty. I did not ask what it cost. The first sign was a watch. Ethan did not wear watches. He said time lived on his phone. One Sunday he came by with coffee. A black box sat on the table. Sloane opened it like a trick on stage. Inside was a steel watch with a face that caught the sun. She said it was a gift to mark new beginnings. I smiled and nodded. I felt a small drop of fear slide down my back. There were more signs, brand bags. A trip to Napa. A photo on a deck with blue water far behind them. Captions spoke of hard work paying off. The hard work did not live in their eyes. When we ate together, their talk curved around names and places I did not know. They spoke of launch parties. They spoke of friends with houses that glowed on hills. I make soup on Sundays. I freeze half for later. When they came for dinner, I filled their bowls twice. Ethan ate fast and told stories about deals that never closed. He promised they would close next quarter. Sloane pushed the soup around with her spoon and said she had already eaten. She stood and took calls by my window. She used a voice that did not sound like home. There were smaller things. A card bill that came to my mailbox by mistake. I walked it over. Her name was bright on the envelope. The number inside had a comma in the middle. Sloane laughed and said points were a game. Spend to earn. Travel for free. Everyone does it. I went back home and folded laundry and watched the street. On the day my knee gave out, I sat in the clinic and waited for Ethan. He did not come. He texted that he was stuck at work, but that he loved me. A nurse with kind eyes helped me to a cab. I told myself he was busy. I said the same line 3 times. It held for a while. The night was long. The apartment was loud with pipes and quiet with memory. On our last Christmas together, Nora had wrapped a wooden puzzle for Ethan. He solved it in minutes and grinned. He asked for a harder one next year. I thought of that when I saw the lien paper on my door. I thought of small hands and honest games. I thought of the way Truth used to sit at our table like a guest with a chair of his own. I tell you this so you know what I lost. It was not only money. It was trust. It was the soft cloth of ordinary days. It was the clean sound of a key in a lock. When the bank used my name, they used my life. Someone who knew my steps helped them. Someone who had eaten my soup pressed my name against a screen and called it mine. I slept 2 hours that night. I set a kettle. I made a list on a yellow pad. I wrote the names of banks in a neat column. I wrote my own number at the top. The sun came slow into the room. The window glass looked old and wavy. I stood very still and listened to the city wake. Then I picked up the phone. I called Harbor Federal when the branches opened. A man named Carl read the file with a tired voice. He asked me to confirm my email, my address, my phone. I confirmed the address and the phone. The email was wrong by 2 letters. I told him I never used that email. He said the application came from a device in Boston. He said the IP matched my building. I live alone. I do not own a tablet. I have one old phone and a laptop that wheezes when it starts. Can you tell me who the authorized user is on the luxury card? I asked. Co-applicant Ethan Hale, he said. His voice softened. And a household member. Sloane. Purchases posted from Back Bay, Beacon Hill, Los Angeles, and Nassau. The Contra Finchers. I wrote the names down. Back Bay, Beacon Hill. I wrote Nassau and put a box around it. I have never left New England except once for Nora's sister's funeral. I asked for copies of the signed documents. He emailed PDFs to the address on file. I could not open them. I asked if he would print them at the branch for pickup. He said yes. A second bank put me on hold and played a cheerful song. Then a woman said I had a personal loan with an adjustable rate. She read a payment I could not afford. I asked when the funds moved. She said the deposit went to a joint account ending in 42. Ethan once asked to be on my account after Nora died. The joint status was still there. I walked to the branch on Ave, with a cane I keep for bad days. The air smelled like toner and lemon cleaner. A manager named Priya met me in a glass office. She printed the papers. She slid them across the table one by one. Every page carried my name. Every page carried a version of my signature that almost fooled me. "Sir, we see online verification," she said. "Text codes. Digital consent. The system shows a match." More second me, my phone never buzzed. I said, "Who changed the number?" She clicked and scrolled. A number was updated 6 weeks ago. Same address. Same last name. It was validated by a selfie check. I stared at my hands. "That is not my face," I said. "If this is fraud within family, it is still fraud," Priya said. "We can freeze the card and set a claim, but the loan sits under your name until the investigation is complete." I signed the freeze forms. My hand shook. I called Ethan. He picked up. "Dad, I'm on a demo. Can we talk later? Did you change my phone on the bank?" "What? No. Why would I do that? I have a lien on my door. A loan I never took. A card with your wife's name. Tell me the truth." "Well," silence. "It's probably a clerical thing," he said. "Let me handle it." "Well, I need you at my apartment now," I said. He hedged. "Sloan has a shoot. We have plans." "Well, Ethan." "Well," he sighed. "Fine. I'll swing by." Well, I lined the papers in 3 stacks. At noon, he did not come. At 1, he texted that he was parking. At 1:15, I heard the door. Ethan stepped in wearing a jacket that cost more than my rent. He put 2 fingers on the stacks as if he touched something hot. "Dad, what is this?" "You tell me." "That's still." He skimmed the top page. The color drained and then returned. "Okay. There were some cash flow issues. Sloan's paycheck got delayed. We bridged a gap. I meant to loop you in." "That's still." "You forged my name," I said. "It's not like that," he said. "It was DocuSign. You told me your last 4 at tax time. I did not think it mattered. It's family." "That's still." "Family is not a password," I said. Sloan came in without knocking. She wore a cream coat and sunglasses. "Walter, you look pale," she said. "This is all stress. We'll clean it up." I had Lee. "You changed my number on the bank," I said. She laughed. "We updated contact info because you never answer email. We saved you time." I had Lee. "You used my name to buy things," I said. "Trips. Bags. Rooms I could not afford." I had Lee. Her eyes were cold. "You live alone in a 1-bedroom. You do not travel. You do not need credit. Ethan and I have obligations. Image matters." "Have so, Villian was." Ethan put a hand out. "Dad, I'll make payments. Commission is due any day." "Have so, Villian was." I pointed at the lien notice. "You put this roof at risk." "Have so, Villian was." He looked at the floor. "I'm sorry," he said. "I want the devices you used." I said. "The email you made with my name. The phone you used to verify." "Have so, Villian was." "It's complicated," he said. "The login is on her iPad. We can fix it next week." "Have so, Villian was." Cold moved through me. I thought of Nora's red ribbon and Ethan's small hands. "Get out," I said. "Leave the keys. Do not touch my accounts again." "He will definite find." Ethan stared at me as if I had broken a rule, he wrote. Sloan smiled. "You'll regret this," she said. "You need us more than you think." "He will definite find." The door closed. I lifted the top page again. My signature curved like mine. It lied like a stranger. I called a lawyer whose card I kept from a clinic talk. I told her what happened. She told me to start a log. Time. Dates. Names. Amounts. Write like the truth must stand in a bright room, she said. I wrote until the light faded. The first line read, I was not the one who signed. The next morning I woke with a tightness in my chest. The kettle hissed, but I let the water go cold. I stared at the yellow pad. The words from last night were still sharp. I was not the one who signed. I called the lawyer again. Her name was Rachel Meyer. She spoke quickly, with a calm edge that made me trust her. Walter, this is serious. Your son and his wife committed identity fraud. You have rights, but you need evidence beyond your word. 9. I have papers, I said. I have notices, statements, balances. 9. You need patterns, she replied. More than one institution, more than one forgery. If we can show they used your identity across banks, it becomes a case of systematic fraud. 9. I thanked her and hung up. My hands shook when I poured the next coffee. I thought about Ethan as a boy, running across the yard with a paper kite. I thought about Nora cheering from the porch. I pressed the mug to my lips and tasted only bitterness. At noon, I walked to the branch again. Priya met me at the door. She carried another file. Mr. Hale. More activity posted overnight. Charges from Los Angeles. Hotels. Jewelry. This is expanding. Said, I took the printouts. The numbers swam. 4,000 here. 8,000 there. I cannot pay these, I whispered. We flagged the account, she said gently. But until fraud is confirmed, liability rests with you, and no can see. I sat on a bench outside the branch. Cars passed. People walked fast with coffee cups and phones. I felt invisible. That night I tried Ethan again. He answered on speaker. Music thumped in the background. Dad, can this wait? We're out with friends. And no can see. Did you buy a ring in Los Angeles? I asked. He hesitated. It's not what you think. And no can see. What is it then? A woman's laugh cut through the line. It was not Sloane's laugh. Ethan hung up. I sat in the dark. My apartment felt smaller than ever. I opened a shoebox of old letters. Ethan's school notes. Cards he made for Father's Day. Crayon lines that said, "You're the best." I touched the paper until it wrinkled. The next morning, Rachel called. Walter. I spoke with a contact at Metro Bank. They saw your name on an attempted loan last fall. Denied for irregular signatures. Did you know about this? No, I said. This was not a one-time act. They've been trying this for months. You are a target because you are family and because you are trusting. Is my like. The word trusting burned. I wrote it on the pad and circled it. I spent the afternoon walking the harbor. The water was dark green. Gulls screamed overhead. I thought about Nora's voice. She once told me, trust is a rope. Strong until someone cuts it. Is my like. That evening, Ethan came to my door without Sloane. His hair was messy. His eyes were red. He held no coffee. No food. Only excuses. Dad. I can explain. He said, sit down. I told him. He sat in the chair where Nora once read magazines. You forged me, I said. It was for Sloane. He blurted. She has standards. She wanted the kind of life her friends have. I couldn't tell her no. I thought I could pay it back before you ever knew. Anyone stott. Do you hear yourself? I asked. He leaned forward. Desperate. You always said family comes first. I thought you meant it. You would have said yes if I asked. Anyone stott? No, I said quietly. I would have helped you find honest work. I would not have given you a crime. Well now, his eyes filled. I didn't mean to hurt you. Well now, You did more than hurt, I said. You broke what cannot be rebuilt. Well now, the room went still. He stared at the floor. What will you do? I will not cover this, I said. I will not lie for you. Well now, he stood quickly. You'll ruin me, he said. No, I replied. You ruined yourself. Well now, he left without closing the door. The cold air rushed in. I shut it with a trembling hand. I pressed my forehead to the wood. In the quiet, I knew the truth had only begun to unfold. The concierge did not meet my eyes when I asked for the elevator. The ride up was slow. The glass showed a wavering shape that was supposed to be me. Their door was open, a crack. I knocked anyway. Music spilled out. A candle burned in a heavy jar that smelled like vanilla and smoke. Sloane crossed the room in a silk blouse and bare feet. She lifted a flute of something pale. Walter, you did not need to come all the way here, she said. Ethan is on a call. He will be done in a second. No, see. Ethan stepped from the office. He took off his headset with a smile that belonged to a pitch. When he saw the file in my hand, the smile slid. Close the door, I said. We should talk as a family. No, see. Sloane sat on the couch. If this is another panic about banks, we can set a time with our advisor, she said. You need to let the young handle the tools we use now. Is the Chand. The young used my name. I said, show me the tablet. Show me the email that carries my initials. Is the Chand. Ethan rubbed his temple. Dad, we already said we would fix it. There is no need to escalate. Is the Chand. You changed my number, I said. You let charges run across states. You tied my roof to your card. Is the Chand. He glanced at Sloane. She did not blink. You are upsetting yourself, she said. You read headlines and think they are your life. Setsei. I put the lien notice on the table. This is not a headline, I said. This is my home. Setsei. Ethan picked up the paper and put it down. There is a hold on a commission, he said. When it clears, the plan will be easy. You do not need to call lawyers. You do not need to scare the bank. Setsei. I looked at gift bags lined near the island. Did you buy a ring in Los Angeles? I asked. Or was that for someone else? Setsei. Sloane tilted her head. Do you hear yourself? She said. You sound like a tabloid. Do not drag our marriage into your budgeting issues. The beta des, my budgeting issues never needed a concierge, I said. They needed boots and a thermos and a paycheck on Fridays. The beta des, Ethan raised his hands. Enough. There is a simple way out. If you sign a letter that grants me authority on your accounts, I can talk to every bank. I can move limits. I can refinance the loan into a better rate. You will not have to lift a finger. The beta des, power of attorney, I said. You want me to hand you the keys after you took the car. In its lead, it is efficient, Sloane said. You are retired. We are offering help. In its lead, help would have been telling the truth, I said. Help would have been one call before you clicked my name. In its lead, Sloane leaned forward. Her voice went soft. Walter, you are alone. You sit with a picture of a woman who is gone. You do not travel. You do not buy gifts for anyone. You have money you will never use. Let it lift the family you made. That is what love looks like at your stage. Hinde Taith. The words hit like ice. I saw Nora at the sink with her red ribbon. I held the edge of the table to keep the room still. I will not sign, I said. Ethan stood. You always said you would stand by me, he said. You always said I was your pride. Hinde Taith. You were, I said. When the truth fit you. Hinde Taith. He took a step closer. If this goes public, it will ruin my job, he said. It will ruin Sloane's contracts. Hinder Taith. Then, do not feed it. I said, call the bank. Admit what you did. Start to pay. And weighs the present. Sloane laughed once. You think this city cares about your moral line? She said. You think anyone will pity a man who hoards and says no? And weighs the present. I do not hoard. I said. I count. And weighs the present. Ethan pressed his fingers to his eyes. Can you at least give us a week? He said. We have a launch. We cannot deal with this now. And weighs the present. You had 6 weeks after you changed the number. I said. You had months after the first denial. And weighs the present. Sloane set down her glass. We can make an arrangement, she said. We can draft a statement that says you consented. It will keep police out. You will keep your apartment. We will keep our lives. It's not a day. That would be another lie, I said. She stood. An arrangement is not a lie, she said. It is adult. It's not a day. It is a lie when it rewrites what happened, I said. I will not sign a thing that says I gave you permission. I did not. It's not a day. Her face opened and closed. You will change your mind when the bank takes your door, she said. Ethan reached for my arm. Dad. Listen to her, he said. We are the only ones who can help you. The system does not care about men like you. I know how to speak to it, I said. I worked a life with people who sign and stamp and check. I will bring them what they need. So you choose strangers over your son, he said. I choose the truth, I said. I put the papers back into my file. Ethan looked at Sloane. She shook her head. He turned back to me. Last chance, he said. Sign the letter. I opened the door. It is already worse, I said. You just do not feel it yet. I stepped into the damp air and started the walk home with the file under my arm and the dull beat of my heart in my ears. I heard Nora's voice. Do it right or do not touch it at all. The night after that meeting, I barely slept. I watched the ceiling crack in the light from the street. I kept hearing their voices. Sloane's cold certainty, Ethan's plea that sounded less like love and more like demand. At dawn, I put on my coat and walked to the harbor. Fog lay thick on the water. I carried the file in my bag. I thought of all the signatures that pretended to be mine. I thought of the way the bank manager had looked at me. Half sorry, half bound by rules. I felt like a man erased and rewritten by his own blood. Rachel called again. Walter. I have something new, she said. Another bank flagged your name on an auto loan application. This time, with a co-applicant you do not know. A man named Mason Cole. I have my plan. Mason Cole? I asked. Yes. But the handwriting looks very close to Sloane's. We suspect she used him as a second front. They are expanding the net. I have my plan. I wrote the name down. I drew a line from Ethan to Sloane to Mason. The yellow pad filled with arrows. That afternoon, I sat in a cafe with an old friend from the yard. Frank Doyle. He had worked fraud prevention after he retired. He studied the printouts I slid across the table. This is a pattern, he said. They tested the system with small loans first. When no one pushed back, they went bigger. The car loan. The line of credit. The card. It is classic staging. They used you because your name is clean. You are a perfect mark. Anything, perfect mark. I repeated. He nodded. But patterns make cases. Keep documenting. Every page. Every call. Every visit. Do not confront them again until you have enough. 8. I thanked him. My coffee went cold. 2 nights later, I saw Ethan's name light my phone. I let it ring twice before I answered. Dad. We can fix this, he said. His voice was fast. I have a friend in finance. He says we can roll the debt into a new package. You just need to confirm your social again. 8. No. I said. Don't be stubborn. He snapped. This is the only way to save the apartment. Add C. The only way to save it is the truth. I said. Silence stretched. Then he muttered, You'll regret this, and hung up. The next day I went to the library. I printed copies of every notice. I filled a folder 2 inches thick. I labeled each section with a date. I typed a timeline on the public computer. I included names, sums, charges. I saved 2 copies on flash drives. One I kept on my keyring. The other I gave to Rachel. You're building a prosecution file, she said. This is exactly what we need. His nothing made. On the way home, I passed a jewelry store. Through the glass I saw Sloane at the counter. She leaned close to a clerk, smiling. She tried on a necklace that gleamed under the lights. A man stood beside her. It was not Ethan. He was younger. Sharp suit. Hair cut close. He held her hand as she admired herself in the mirror. I stepped back into the shadows. My chest ached. I lifted my phone and took a photo through the glass. Her ring was visible. So was the stranger's arm around her waist. I walked away before she saw me. At home, I printed the photo and slid it into the folder. The file grew heavier. Not just with paper, but with the weight of truth. Ethan thought this was about commission checks. Sloane thought this was about image. But I knew now. This was about theft layered with betrayal. That night I dreamed of Nora again. She stood at the sink with her red ribbon. Turning to me with tired eyes, she whispered, Do not let them take what we built. Think she's wearing other. I woke with tears on my face. The phone rang at breakfast. Rachel again. Walter. The district attorney's office is willing to look at your case if we present everything in sequence. They need it airtight. Are you ready? I looked at the folder on the table. I looked at Nora's picture. Yes, I said. I am ready. Think that too near veal. Sloane did not wait for the law to move. She moved first. A message went around our family thread. It said I was confused. It said I mixed up bills. It said I was lashing out because I could not adapt to the tools everyone uses. She framed it as concern. She told Ethan's friends to be kind. She added a line that cut me like wire. Walter has had trouble remembering things lately. I found out when my niece forwarded a screenshot. She asked if I needed help with groceries. I stared at the blue bubbles and felt something come loose in my chest. I called Ethan. Take that message down, I said. It came from a good place, he said. People worry about you. You forget appointments. You fell last winter. I slipped on ice, I said. I did not forget my name. He sighed. Dad, we are trying to make this easier. If you had let me handle the accounts, none of this would be public. The superintendent left a note on my door. It said the building had concerns about liens. He needed to confirm I could meet my rent. He wrote it like paperwork. I read it like a judgment on the life I built with Nora. At the pharmacy, my card declined. The clerk said it happens. I paid with cash I keep in an envelope in my coat. I walked home with the paper bag tucked under my arm like a secret. That night, Sloane called me. She did not hide the edge in her voice. She said I was embarrassing Ethan with my stubbornness. She said I was stuck in the past. She said a man my age should be grateful to feel useful. Her last sentence landed low. Money does not do you much good this late in life. You could at least let it lift your son. I held the phone away. I looked at Nora's picture. Then I put the phone back to my ear. You talk about my age, as if it cancels my name, I said. It does not cancel you, she replied. It sets a scale. You will not need 30 years. Ethan will. Be practical. His nodded Reverius. You are asking me to vanish on schedule, I said. She hung up. That evening, Ethan met me at a diner near South Station. He picked at eggs and did not eat. Sloan is under pressure, he said. Brands watch everything. If they think we are unstable, they pull deals. I need you to issue a short note saying you consented to the card. Just a sentence. It will calm things down. Those am I. I did not consent, I said. He looked around the diner. The cook flipped a burger. The server refilled a cup. Ethan lowered his voice. If you do not help me, they will blacklist me, he said. I will lose the job. We will be broke. Is that what you want for your son? I want you to stop lying, I said. His face hardened. You never wanted me to have more than you, he said. You like me small. You like me supplicant. You like to be needed. I do know. I kept my hands flat on the table so I would not shake. I wanted you honest, I said. I wanted you safe. I do know. He laughed without humor. Safe is poor, he said. Safe is small. Safe is soup and coupons and a coat that smells like rain. I do know. Safe is a roof, I said. Safe is no one can take your bed while you sleep, said. He pushed back from the booth. If you will not help, then stay out of my way. Sloan and I have a plan, said. What is the plan? I asked. He smiled, a thin smile. We file a wellness concern with the bank, he said. We say you are not competent to manage. They assign me. We fix it in days, said. I felt a cold I had not felt even at Nora's funeral. It was not grief. It was clarity. You will not file that, I said. If you do, you cross a line. You cannot cross back. Thanks for watching. Watch me, he said, and left the check on the table for me to pay. I did not cry in the diner. I waited until I reached the sidewalk. The city kept moving like I was nothing inside it. I went home and wrote everything down. I wrote the words he used. I wrote the plan he said out loud. I wrote the names of every person he would need to convince. I wrote the date. I wrote the time. Then I called Rachel. I told her about the diner. I told her about the wellness claim. We will preempt it, she said. We will file a declaration from your doctor. We will notify the banks that any claim about your capacity is part of the fraud. Anyone with you might. In the morning I made oatmeal and ate it slowly. It steadies me to set 2 spoons even when I eat alone. The mailbox held a thin envelope from a boutique card brand I have never used. It read, Final Notice. It listed a purchase I could see even with the tremor in my hands. A weekend suite at a hotel in Miami. 2 names on the reservation. Sloan Hale. Mason Cole. I placed the paper flat on the table. I listened to the kettle and the street and my own breath. Then I reached for the yellow pad. I wrote a new line under yesterday's entry in the neat block hand that has signed timesheets for almost 7 decades. They are not done taking. They are not done talking. But I am done being quiet. I kept the Miami notice in a clear sleeve. It felt heavier than paper. It felt like a door swinging open to something darker. If Sloan could spend stolen money on another man, then Ethan was not only reckless, he was blind. Rachel met me in her office that afternoon. I laid the sleeve on her desk. She read the reservation, the names, the total. She tapped her pen twice. This is more than fraud, she said. This is betrayal that bleeds. We can use it in court to show intent. They are living off you and laughing. Stain. I watched the window behind her. The city moved. Cars flashed in the wet streets. I spoke slowly. I want to build this so no one else can ever call me delusional. I want it perfect. Then keep collecting, she said. But be careful. They may sense you are ahead of them. That night I walked 3 blocks to their loft. I did not knock. I sat in my car with a thermos of coffee. At 11, Sloane stepped out in heels that clicked like hammers. She kissed a man in a dark coat. Not Ethan. I raised my old camera. The lens clicked. The photo caught her ring. Her hand on his face. The way he bent to her like they had done this before. I followed them at a distance. They drove to a hotel with glass walls and gold trim. They laughed at the desk. They took the elevator. I stayed in the lobby and bought tea I did not drink. At 1 in the morning they came down again. He carried her bag. She leaned on him like a wife. I clicked again. When I drove home, the streets were empty. I spread the prints on my table. They showed what I had seen. Not a guess. Not an old man's paranoia. Proof. The next morning Ethan came to my apartment. His hair was slick. He held a folder. He set it down like a gift. Dad. I filed paperwork for the restructuring. We just need your signature here. Once you sign, the banks will leave you alone. It's knotted way. I did not touch the folder. I slid a photo across instead. He picked it up. His jaw fell. Where did you get this? I saw it. I said. With my own eyes. She is not only stealing. She is sharing what she steals. Seeks, he stared at the photo. Then at me. His lips moved but no words came. Finally he said, You doctored this. Seeks, I did not. I said. I stood in the cold and watched. Seeks, he slammed the photo down. You hate her. You want to ruin us. Seeks, she already ruined you. I said softly. He grabbed the folder. His hands shook. If you go to the police with this, you kill me. Seeks, no. I said. If I do not, you kill yourself. Anyone sue to thou. He left without another word. That evening Sloane called me. Her voice was calm. Too calm. Walter, you are making mistakes. Following me. Taking pictures. That is dangerous. People might think you are unstable. Anyone sue to thou. I am steady enough to see the truth. I said. Truth is flexible. She replied. Ask your son. He chooses me. He will always choose me. Anyone sue to thou. I hung up before her voice could cut further. I sat at my table until the sun came up. I lined the photos with the bank papers. The Miami notice. The forged signatures. I thought of Nora's ribbon. I thought of Ethan as a boy. Then I picked up the phone and called Rachel. It is time, I said. We build the case now. There's note that Rachel set a meeting with a detective from the Financial Crimes Unit. His name was Kevin Rourke. He asked for dates and copies. He told me to preserve everything. Rachel sent letters to the banks that afternoon. Preservation notices. Do not delete. Do not alter. She copied me on each email. She told me to stop calling Ethan and not to meet Sloane alone. The safest place now was paper and law. I went to the jewelry store where I had seen Sloane. The manager wore a dark suit and a thin patience. I showed him the photo and my license. I said my name was used to buy what he sold. He said policy prevented him from sharing. I said my attorney would issue a subpoena. He took my card. He promised to hold receipts and footage. I stopped at the hotel with glass walls. I asked the concierge to confirm dates. He shook his head. I wrote down his name and the time and his exact words. Frank met me at the library. We took a corner table. He brought a binder and dividers. We built sections. Timeline. Accounts. Devices. Witnesses. Photos. He showed me how to map behavior against posted charges. 9:42, a purchase at the bar. 10:11, the elevator. 10:30, room service. The pattern marched across hours. I called the building manager at Ethan's loft. He keeps logs for deliveries and keys. He remembered Sloane signing for packages from a luxury retailer. He remembered a second man waiting in the lobby on 2 nights in March. He wrote a note on company paper. He signed and dated it. Next, I visited Mrs. Alvarez on E Street. She is 76. Ethan asked her to co-sign a small work loan last winter. He said it was for materials. She trusted him because he carried groceries for her after Nora died. The car company took her sedan last month. She cried when she read the letter. She showed me the contract. The signature block held a name that was not hers and looked like mine. I took photos and sent them to Rachel. Rachel called within an hour. "This is big," she said. "We now have a second victim. We can show a scheme. The law sees lines better than dots. Keep going. Walter." I returned to Harbor Federal. Priya printed a device audit for my profile. She could not give me the full list, but she pointed to the city and time of each login. The logins matched my notes. A Boston IP near the harbor. A second near a studio in Back Bay. She tapped the screen. "This one shows a selfie check. Somewhere there is a camera that told a machine I was one of them." Kevin called the next day. A boutique card brand confirmed my name was used to open a premium account with concierge access. The file showed a call that requested travel for 2 to Miami. The voice on the call did not match mine. He asked if I used the phrase, "status match." I said, "I do not know what that is." He said he knew I did not. He asked to contact the district attorney. I said yes. He asked if I was prepared to have my son arrested if this moved fast. I did not answer for 10 seconds. Then I said yes. But it sounded like a prayer. Frank said we needed neutral statements. We went back to the hotel. We sat in the lounge. We spoke to a server with a lighthouse tattoo on his wrist. He remembered Sloane because she asked for a glass by name. He remembered the man because he tipped in cash. The server wrote a paragraph and signed his name. Back at my apartment, I built a wall. I taped the timeline in rows. I used string. It was for order. I could see the nights when charges rose and fell. I could see the morning my contact number changed. I could see the message where Ethan asked for my social after midnight. The red string touched everything we had written. The truth did not look like a story. It looked like a map. Rachel reviewed the wall by video. She told me to take photos and put prints in the binder. She said walls catch fire. Binders go to court. At the corner market, the owner handed me a package. A courier had tried my door while I was out. Inside, I found a leather folio. It held a note from Sloane. It said, "We can still make this clean if you sign." I put the note in a sleeve. I wrote down the time and the tracking number. That night, Ethan sent a text. He said he was sorry. He said Sloane had put him in a corner. He said he loves me. He asked me to delay the lawyer for a week. He said he would fix everything. I typed 3 words. "I will not." Then I laid the phone face down and listened to the pipes. Rachel called at 7 the next morning. She had met with the assistant district attorney. They wanted our binder. They wanted the photos and the notes and the names. They wanted me to write a narrative in my own words. Clear. Simple. Dates and verbs. No speeches. I can do that. Before I slept, I stood at the wall. I touched Nora's photo. I told her I was doing it right. I told her I was carrying what we built the careful way. Not fast. Not angry. Not loud. Steady. Clean. True. The binder went to the district attorney's office on a Thursday morning. Rachel and I carried it through security. It was heavy enough that my shoulder ached. The clerk stamped it received. That sound of ink hitting paper felt like a small victory. Detective Rourke met us in a side room. He spread the photos and receipts across the table. He tapped one of Sloane and the man in the hotel. He tapped the lien notice. He tapped Mrs. Alvarez's repossession letter. He looked at me. "Mr. Hale, this is a criminal enterprise. It is not sloppy. It is deliberate." "Yes." I nodded. I felt old and steady. The assistant district attorney, Miss Jensen, entered with a laptop. She asked me to tell the story out loud from start to finish. I began with the call from Harbor Federal. I kept my voice low. I kept my sentences plain. I spoke about Nora only once, when I explained why Ethan still had access to my accounts. When I finished, she closed the laptop. We can file charges for identity theft, fraud, and elder financial abuse, she said. We will need you in court. We will need you strong. In Developed 8, I can be strong, I said. That night, Ethan showed up at my apartment. He looked thinner. His eyes darted. He tried to smile, but it cracked. Dad, please, he said. I heard you're talking to lawyers. We can fix this as a family. You don't need to drag me into court. In Developed 8, you dragged yourself there, I said. He dropped onto my couch. Sloane set this up. She said it was easy. She said everyone does it. I just followed her lead. In Developed 8, you signed my name, I said. You used my number. You lied to me. So, he rubbed his face. I was scared. She said if I didn't give her what she wanted, she would leave. I thought I was keeping us together. So, you lost us both, I said. He leaned forward, desperate. I'll testify against her. I'll tell them it was her idea. Just don't let them lock me up. So, the truth will lock you up, I said. His eyes filled. I'm your son, he whispered. You were my son when you told the truth, I said, not when you chose her lies over me. And I would vented. He slammed his hand on the table. You'll regret this, he said. I stood. The only regret is that I gave you chances I should not have. And I would vented. He left, slamming the door so hard the frame shook. I sat back down and let the silence cover me like a blanket. The next morning, Rachel called. Walter, the DA is filing today. Ethan and Sloane will be served. Police may visit you for more statements. Stay ready. And I would vented. I looked at the wall of strings and papers. For the first time in weeks, I felt lighter. But by evening, the phone rang again. It was the building manager. Mr. Hale. Police came by looking for Ethan. Neighbors said they saw him here. He was shouting in the hall. He left in a hurry. I locked my door. I closed the blinds. I sat with the binder open on the table. I knew the fight was moving faster now. At midnight, I heard footsteps in the stairwell. A knock, heavy and hard, rattled the frame. Dad, let me in, Ethan's voice said. I stayed in my chair. I kept my hands flat. Another knock, louder, then silence. I breathed out slow. I whispered to Nora's picture. Tomorrow they'll know it all. They're feigned, and tomorrow came. The summons came on a gray Monday. A uniformed officer slid the envelope across my kitchen table. Inside was the court date. Bold and final. My name as complainant. Ethan and Sloane listed as defendants. The officer explained the process, but I barely heard him. I kept staring at the names. My son. My blood. Written beside words like fraud and theft. Rachel met me the next day to prepare testimony. She asked me to read each page aloud. She corrected when my voice wavered. Stay plain, she said. Do not embellish. Jurors respect clear words. I practiced until my throat ached. On the morning of the hearing, I dressed in my best suit, the one Nora bought me for retirement. The tie was slightly faded, but the knot came easy. I carried the binder like a shield. At the courthouse steps, reporters gathered. Cameras clicked. Someone shouted my name. I kept walking. Inside, the victims waited. Mrs. Alvarez sat with her hands folded. A younger woman named Carla from Ethan's office held a folder of her own. She whispered that he borrowed money from her too. Each face in that room held the same mix of anger and shame. But together we looked stronger. When Ethan entered, he looked smaller than I had ever seen. His suit hung loose. His eyes darted toward me but did not hold. Sloane walked behind him. Her hair perfect. Her chin high. She looked at the jury box as if it were a runway. The judge called us to order. The DA laid out the charges. Identity theft, bank fraud, elder exploitation, conspiracy. Each word felt like a hammer. Ethan shifted in his chair. Sloane sat still, lips pressed thin. When it was my turn, I rose. I swore the oath. I opened the binder. I told them about the first call from Harbor Federal. I told them about the lien notice. I showed them my signature beside the forgery. I kept my sentences short. My hands shook only once when I mentioned Nora. I steadied them on the edge of the stand. The defense tried to soften it. They said Ethan acted under pressure. They said I misremembered details. They said families fight about money all the time. Then the DA played the recording of Sloane's call to me. Her voice telling me I was old, useless, and should give what I would never use. The courtroom went still. One by one, the other victims spoke. Mrs. Alvarez with tears. Carla with anger. Each story fit the map I had built. Each story showed a line pointing back to Ethan and Sloane. When the judge adjourned for the day, I walked past my son. He looked at me, mouth open, eyes wet. He whispered, "Dad, please." I kept walking. That night I sat in my apartment. I made tea. I placed the binder back on the shelf. I felt the weight leave my shoulders, but the ache in my chest remained. Justice was moving, but love was gone. The next morning Rachel called. "Walter, the DA is confident. We may secure a plea, but it will not erase the pain." "Chloe, I know," I said. She was quiet, then added, "You carried this case farther than most investigators. Whatever happens, you gave the truth its legs." "Chloe." I hung up and looked at Nora's photo. "We did it right," I whispered. The plea came faster than I expected. Rachel called at noon with her voice steady and careful. Ethan would plead to fraud and conspiracy. He would accept restitution and community service. He would agree to financial counseling. Sloane fought for 2 days. Then she signed for a lesser charge with a civil judgment. The court would freeze accounts and seize items that traced back to my name. It sounded clean inside the words. It did not feel clean in my chest. I walked home past the harbor. The tide was low. Ropes creaked against posts. The city moved like always. I moved inside it like a man whose skin did not fit. 2 neighbors nodded short and quick. I could see questions in their eyes. I could also see a small respect. I had carried truth. I had carried it without shouting. The next morning, I took down the wall. I peeled tape slow and placed each page in a sleeve. I rolled the string into a ball and dropped it in a drawer. I left one picture up, Nora in her red ribbon. She smiled at me across the empty paint. "Mrs. Alvarez called to say thank you." The repo company returned her car. The DA had called her with the news. She cried and blessed me and asked if I could look at her kitchen light. I went that afternoon with my toolbox. The switch needed a new plate. I screwed it in until it sat flat. She handed me a plate of cookies and would not take no. When I left, she touched my arm. Her hands were small and warm. She said I had made a thing the world had tried to unmake. I met Ethan in a park at dusk. He had asked for 10 minutes. He waited on a bench near a tree that had lost most of its leaves. He wore a hoodie and kept pulling at the cuff like a boy. He did not stand when I sat. He stared at his shoes and spoke into the space between us. "I signed," he said. "I did what they asked. They took my watch and the suit she bought. They took the card. My job is gone. I will sell the car. I have to find a room by Friday. I do not have a deposit. I listened. The wind moved a paper cup along the path. A dog barked twice and then was quiet again. I do not have it to give, I said. He swallowed. He nodded. He did not argue. He took a breath that sounded like it hurt. I am sorry, he said. I know that word is small. I know I burned through bigger words. I know I took your name and used it like a key. I know I chose her over you. I do not know why that felt like love when it was only fear. I looked at his hands. They shook. He had my hands. He had my father's hands. Calloused and thin and made for work. I wanted to take them in mine and pull him back to a time when soup on Sundays fixed most things. I did not move. I set a line in my mind and kept it. I made a list. I said, I can offer these things. I can meet you for coffee on Saturdays at the diner. I can listen. I can give you the number for a counselor Rachel trusts. I can send you 3 leads for day work that pays cash until the court clears your status. I cannot co-sign. I cannot hand you a card. I will not speak to you if you lie. If you break these, I will stop. He nodded fast. He wiped his face with his sleeve. He said he would try. He said he would be on time. He said he needed me to hate him less. I told him hate was not what lived in me. Grief lived there. Grief sits still. It does not throw plates. It does not run. It watches the door and does not know if it wants to open it. Sloane sent a single text that night. It said I had destroyed a future that could have been beautiful. It said I was small. It said I was jealous. I deleted it without replying. It felt like dropping a stone into a dark river. There was no sound when it hit. Rachel came by with papers for me to sign. She explained the payment schedule for restitution. It would take years. She said that patience is a kind of justice too. I signed and then closed the pen. She stayed for tea. She asked if I felt relief. I said I felt space. Relief is a clean word. Space is the truth. Space where a sun used to sit. Space on a wall where string used to map nights. I joined a small group at the community center on Tuesdays. The sign on the door said, Support for financial abuse. The room smelled like coffee and pencil shavings. People spoke in simple words. A man in a work jacket said his grandson had used his name to open a phone plan and left him with a bill that shut his lights. A teacher said her sister drained their mother's account. We did not offer advice. We offered presence. It helped. I fixed small things to fill the hours. A loose hinge. A torn screen. A lamp with a frayed cord that I rewired like I used to on night shift in the tunnels. I gave away 2 coats I did not need. I learned the names of the kids who ran in the alley below my window. I sat with Mrs. Alvarez on her stoop and watched the sky go from pink to slate. The news ran a story with my name for a day. Then it moved on. That felt right. The world is wide. My fight was 1 dot on its map. What mattered was the circle around me. The rooms where voices speak your name without a price. The hands that pass a plate without a ledger. Ethan called on a Saturday and said he had found a room in Dorchester. It was small and clean. He sent a photo of a bed with a blue blanket and a window with a fire escape. He said he had swept the floor 3 times because it felt good to make something clean with his hands. He asked if I wanted to see it. I said not yet. I said maybe after the first month. I said I was proud he had swept. Then I hung up and cried in my kitchen where no one could see me. I let it pass without wiping my face. It was honest water. On Sunday, I made soup. I set 2 spoons and then moved 1 back to the drawer. I ate slow. I turned on the radio and listened to a game without caring who won. I watched a man on the sidewalk teach a boy to ride a small bike. The boy fell and stood and tried again. The man ran beside him with one hand on the seat. He let go, and the boy rolled free for 2 seconds before wobbling. The man cheered anyway. That night I wrote to Nora in the notebook I keep in a drawer. I told her I had done what we promised we would do when we married in a church that smelled like lemons and dust. We said we would tell the truth even when it cost. We said we would hold the rope even when it burned our hands. I told her my hands were burned. I told her the rope still held. When I turned out the light, the room was quiet. I could hear the hum of the fridge and the pipes, and the far sound of tires on wet streets. I could also hear my own breath. It sounded like it belonged to a man who had lost and also kept something. It sounded like a life that still moved. I began to count time in quiet things. Coffee cooling, light moving across the floor. The sound of a paper sliding under my door. A card from a stranger. He wrote that his daughter had used his name for a loan. He heard my story from a friend. He asked how I did it. I called and spoke to him for 20 minutes. I told him what Rachel told me. Keep records. Use clear words. Ask for help. Do not agree to what feels wrong. He cried. I did not stop him. It is good to let water out when a house has been flooded. Days settled into clean habits. I woke early. I walked the harbor. I waved at the same dog that barked and then wagged. I fixed 2 lamps for neighbors. I sanded a chair until the wood looked like it could breathe again. I learned how to cook rice so it did not stick. I wrote 3 names on my fridge. Frank, Rachel, Mrs. Alvarez. Under them I wrote call if the room tilts. The room did not tilt as often. Ethan kept his side of the small agreement. On Saturdays he came to the diner. He sat across from me and ordered the cheapest plate. He arrived on time. He told me where he was working that week. Moving boxes. Painting trim. Carrying sheetrock upstairs. He did not ask for money. He did not blame. He listened when I told him about a tool I still like to hold. He asked about Nora for the first time in years. He said he was sorry he skipped the clinic that day. My knee went bad. I said the nurse had kind eyes. He blinked hard and nodded, and then asked if I would come see his room when it felt ready. I said I would. Sloane disappeared from our street. A friend sent a notice of a move. She had taken a contract in another city. She posted a photo of a glass building and wrote about views and brand work and light. I did not read the comments. I let the wind take the last thin pieces of her name from the corners of my life. Some grief needs something to be held. This grief needed nothing. The court mailed a schedule that listed the first payment from Ethan. It was small. It was on time. I put a copy in the binder and a copy in a kitchen drawer. I did not cheer. I did not cry. I marked the date on my pad with a small dot. Rachel said that dots become lines when you add enough of them. I believed her. She had told me the truth when truth was expensive. Spring came slow. The trees along the harbor put out thin leaves that looked shy. I walked farther each day. One morning I passed a schoolyard. A teacher drew a hopscotch grid in chalk. The squares were neat and bright. A girl with a blue coat jumped from 1 to 2 to 3 and then missed 4. She laughed and tried again. The teacher clapped for the trying, not the landing. I stood and watched and felt something shift in me. It was small and steady. It was the kind of hope that does not shout. Ethan texted a picture of his room with a plant on the sill. He said the plant had 4 leaves when he bought it, and now it had 7. He said he had learned the same thing about words. He wrote fewer and meant more. He wrote, "Thank you, and I will be on time." I sent a photo of the chair I had sanded. We were 2 men trading proof that we were still trying. On a Sunday late in May, I took the train to Dorchester and climbed the stairs to his floor. He met me at the door with paint on his hands. The room was small and clean. The bed was made. The blue blanket was smooth. He showed me a shelf he built from boards he found in a dumpster. It was straight and strong. He told me how many times he measured. We sat on the edge of the bed and said nothing for a while. Then he said a line that will live in my kitchen for as long as I stand. Dad, I think I love the work more than the picture of the life now. I told him that was a line a man can build a house on. I walked home in a soft rain. The city was quieter in that weather. I stopped at the market and bought 2 apples and a loaf of bread. The owner asked how I was. I said I was all right. He nodded as if that was a rich answer. In my apartment, I dried my coat and lit a small lamp. I ate an apple and watched the light through the thin shade. I took down Nora's photo and cleaned the glass and put it back up straight. I told her the line, Ethan said. I told her about the girl who kept jumping even when she missed 4. That night I wrote again in the notebook I keep. I wrote that justice had done what it could. It had not fixed the hole. It had set a fence around it so I would not fall in when I walked past in the dark. I wrote that I was not alone. I wrote that the rope we promised to hold was burned but still strong. I wrote that if my son kept his Saturdays, I would keep mine. I wrote that I would tell the truth even when it makes the room quiet. When I turned off the lamp, the room was not empty. It held the hum of the fridge and the rub of the pipes and the soft sound of tires on wet street. It held a plant in a window across the city that was learning to live on enough. It held the picture of a woman with a red ribbon and a smile that says, "Do it right." I lay down and closed my eyes. I slept through the night for the first time since the call. The light moved across the floor. It did not hurt to watch it.